Sign up for Melanin Muse's free weekly love letter at melaninmuse.com, delivered to your inbox every Wednesday to get full video podcast episodes of the Pivot Muse and indulge in Black women's brilliance and learn as we share our pivotal stories.
Trina has another big idea for the rap group. She wants them to perform at the Lyricist Lounge in New York City. The Lyricist Lounge was founded in 1991 by hip-hop enthusiasts Danny Castro and Anthony Marshall. It was a series of open mic events hosted in a small apartment in the Lower East Side section of New York City. New York City's Lyricist Lounge is compared to the impact Apollo Theater had on soul music. Talented artists poured their hearts out to get discovered. Trina, Tina, and Ebony are practicing outside Trina's home again. Guess what, y'all? Trina says. Ebony and Tina responds in unison. What? We're headed to New York City to perform for the new Lyricist Lounge where all the new artists are being discovered, Trina says. For real? That's so dope. I can't wait to visit New York City, Tina responds. That's crazy. How we gonna get there though? New York City is 5 hours away, Ebony says. I'm driving my new Jeep. My dad said it was cool, Trina responds. Oh boy, the same manual shift Jeep that we got stuck on the hill of Goodman Avenue taking Ebony home, Tina asks sarcastically. Yes, so get your skills up, Trina says. The girls laugh. Fast forward, the girls make it to New York City for their performance at the Epic Lyricist Lounge. Unfortunately, they get lost around New York City and are extremely late. When they finally find the venue, they are too late and see KRS-One walking out. Oh my God, that's KRS-One, Tina whispers to Trina and Ebony. Appearing on the rap scene in 1986 as Boogie Down Productions artist, releasing his first single, South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, with his DJ Scott LaRock, KRS-One made it clear that hip hop was going to have to take itself a lot more serious than simply being a music genre. KRS-One, an acronym for Knowledge Reigning Supreme, has been called the conscience of hip hop by Rolling Stone and the greatest live MC ever by The Source magazine. Ebony walks towards KRS-One to get his attention and speak. Hi, we are huge fans of your work, Ebony says to KRS-One. KRS-One joins the girls at the bottom of the steps. We are a rap group from upstate New York, and we would love to know, what do you recommend for us to get discovered? Trina says to KRS-One. You need to be in there, pointing behind him. This is where new artists are being discovered. Why didn't you perform today? He responds. We got lost, Tina says to KRS-One. Well, don't give up. If you're hungry and you got talent, show up early and showcase your talent right here, KRS-One responds. The girls thank him, and Tina pulls out her Kodak disposable camera to capture the moment. KRS-One leaves, but makes sure the girls know that this setback is not the end of their story and encourages them to keep going. The girls return to Trina's Jeep without ever entering the building. They were sad, but they made the most of their time in the big city, shopping for unique outfits that they can use on stage. They return to Rochester in the wee hours of the morning, motivated to keep following their passion. Tina's pivot story continues in episode 10 of the Pivot Muse podcast and is brought to you by Penthouse Media. Before we get into the conversation, it's important to acknowledge that the Pivot Muse podcast is presented by Melanin Muse. Melanin Muse is our love letter to Black women, sharing our genius and impact on the world, owning our narrative. It's our time. So as you've pivoted throughout your life and career, who are your Melanin Muses and what impact have they had on your journey?
My Melanin Muses would be my mom for sure, and Tish Hayward, who was like a mother figure slash best friend slash sister, is like any female mentor to me. My mom has always just embodied the image of strength, and she's shown me that she could overcome any obstacle. She took a risk on her, children. I was born in Mississippi. I grew up in Georgia, and my mom moved from Mississippi to Georgia to provide a better family environment for me and my siblings. And so I remember being like 4 or 5 years old and seeing her with tears in her eyes as we drive, but just seeing the
Mm.
sacrifice that she made for us so that we could dream even bigger. And Tish Hayward, who is the mother of NFL Pro Bowl Casey Hayward, we started this off together. I am in the position that I am right now because of Tish's influence and impact on my life. In 2016, she passed away to breast cancer. Prior to that, our goal was to just take over the world and help young girls out and provide and heal communities. We were on a mission to do that together. I had to go through some healing in that process myself with losing her, but I'm literally sitting right here having these conversations because the impact that they've had in my life.
That's beautiful. I love that. And I'm sorry for your loss. That is a journey of healing. And especially when someone has that much impact on you. Thank you for sharing. I'm excited about this conversation. The Pivot Muse brings you curated stories and advice from global professionals on making one of life's most important decisions, the pivot. I'm your host, Natina Marie, and our guest today is Ashley S. Green, award-winning sports, entertainment, and lifestyle marketing consultant. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Let's get real right into this story, your pivotal journey. You've not only mastered the art of pivoting in your own career, but now you're helping athletes understand the importance of the pivot, no pun intended, by teaching them how to pivot from being a successful athlete to also one that's strategically is building a brand beyond the sport and leaving a legacy. Your past is also that you were an educator. Once you're an educator, you're always an educator. How are you coaching these athletes to really change the way they're thinking, seize the time, and make these really important decisions about their brand?
Yes. One of the things I want to say first is I love the fact that you said once you're an educator, you're always an educator, because that's something I struggled with when I decided to leave education. I struggled with identity, career identity. I was like, I have my master's degree. I've been recognized for the work I'm doing in the Middle East and North Africa. And I was like, and you're going to walk away? When you're called or pulled to pivot, some people listen and pivot, and some people push through life, whether they're happy or not. Understanding that the educator traits in me, understanding that everything that I did was not in vain, is what has allowed me to be successful with the athletes that I'm working with, and has allowed me to help them to show up in their communities and spaces. I have a player, Jonathan Jones, two-time Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots. And I initially met him in 2020. I was living in Dubai. And he's like, I need to bring you on. And I was like, no, I had already Googled him. You have a team. Don't get rid of your team. He came back in 2021 and he was like, listen, I need you. Everything that we have done from the moment 2021 up until present, we've strategically hosted events and we've strategically had interviews where he said, I want to remain with this organization. We have created programming in the areas that he's from: New England, Carrollton, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama. And now presently he's the Walter Payton nominee for his organizations. Everything that I do with the athletes, everything I do with the players, it all ties back to my background in education, and gifted education in particular. Gifted education is all about choices, and it's about honoring the gifts and talents that one has inside. Whenever I do work with athletes, it's not about me bringing some pre-programmed, pre-drafted events and programming to them. I want to know who they are. I want to learn who they are. I want to know what they don't like to do. If I have an athlete tell me no 100 times, I'm actually happy. I'm a little frustrated. Come on.
Right.
Sometimes I'm like, this is a great idea. But then sometimes I'm like, I'm really glad you said no because I came up with something even better for you. I use my background as an educator to really get to know the athletes that I'm working with and then to create in education, we'd say differentiated instruction, but creating differentiated plans for them so that they're not just doing the same events that every other athlete in the NFL is doing.
I love that. Sometimes we don't understand how our skills are transferable into different industries. This is just a perfect example of how all the things that you were trained to do and you obviously did well and were recognized for as an educator is playing a huge part into you being able to work with athletes and others in this space of helping them to understand their gifts and to share those gifts and understand how to turn their passion into something that's actually going to build a brand and leave a legacy. I really love that about your journey. Let's take a really quick step back to the decision you made after college to actually become a global educator and teach in Dubai. Tell me what inspired you to make that decision.
I went to Georgia Southern, go Eagles. When I was in college, my freshman year, I found out that we could go and study in England. They told us that it was very competitive. They only selected 7 to 8 educators from the program to go. And I made up in my mind that I was going. When it was time, I was one of the selected educators to go. On my first day in England, Sheffield, England, we arrived at Rainbow Forge Primary School. This little girl came up to me and said, I've never seen a brown person before. I looked at her, I smiled, I nodded, I said, okay, we can have a hug. And she gave me a hug. And from there, a bond was formed. Whenever we would see each other, we would always hug. If I was in one of the classes, she'd come sit next to me. She was a beautiful girl, but it was obvious that she was living in poverty. And that's one thing Ruby Payne has done research on poverty, and she talks about how when you are living in poverty, you view the world as your community. You never, this girl was in Sheffield, England. I had to take a train to get to her school and then I got off the train and then walk probably half a mile to get to the school. If she never left her community, it makes sense why she had never seen a brown person before. So one day she had these blisters on her feet, and so I took her to the school nurse to get some band-aids, plasters, and the nurse was like, I'm too busy to deal with that. And I said, well, if you give me the plasters, I'll put it on her feet. And so she gave me the plasters. I took her to the bathroom. Her feet were filthy. I got a paper towel. I got soap and water, and I like started just like cleaning in between her toes and everything, even though the blisters are more so on the back of her heel. At that point, she looked up at me and she was like, thank you so much. She said, my mom doesn't always let me take a bath. I said, well, get a paper towel, get some soap. I was like, you can even like wash your face, wash behind your ears. She was like, I'm going to come to you every single day and we're going to do this. The moment that this happened, it was probably like a Tuesday. I was leaving on that Friday. I had been there over a period of time at this point, and I reflected in that moment. I've journaled, so I journaled all of this. But I reflected in that moment her impression of Black women when she first met me, which she had never seen a brown person before, versus her impression of it when I was leaving, was that for a period of time until she had another encounter with a Black woman, she was going to think of the way that I embraced her and the way that I supported her and the way that I taught her. At that moment, I said the world needs to see more Black women globally in education. I always knew that I was going to go somewhere. I didn't know where. Even when I was ready for my pivot in 2014, I thought I was leaving Georgia and like going to California. I knew I was going far. I just didn't know where I was going. And December of 2014, I was like, this is it. I'm done. I'm leaving. By the end of January, I had a job offer in Dubai.
That is such a beautiful story. once you leave, especially when you leave internationally and you're exposed to different cultures and different things, it just becomes really, it fuels you, really gives you that like energy you need to keep doing what you're very passionate about. Thank you for sharing that. You decided to pivot from education. Was there like a specific thing that happened? What were you going through behind the scenes? What was it to make you know that you had higher purpose, or was someone coaching you into this?
One of the things is in 2016, I lost a mother figure. And after losing her, I viewed life differently. I viewed time differently. I viewed peace. I have to honor and protect peace at all costs. I got to a space where I wanted to make sure that everything I did, I valued myself and I was working in spaces where I was also valued. I had a day at work and my administrator said to me, "Tell me something good." Literally just like that. And I looked at her and I was like, and I said, "I have nothing to complain about right now, but I can't tell you anything good." December of 2018. It was in that moment that I was like, something has to change. So that was the moment of knowing that there was going to be a pivot in my life. I love to journal and I love to read. So I went up to the library. I saw this book called Drive. When I saw the book, I started reading it. The focus was on autonomy. I was like, yes, I need choice. I need to be able to decide the work that I'm doing and the direction that I want to go in. It talked about mastery, it talked about motivation, and ultimately, it just talked about what businesses do versus what science says. I was like, I want to be in a space where I have autonomy. Shortly after I finished the school year, I knew that shift was coming. I put in my resignation. I took a solo trip to Singapore and I really reflected on what was next. I started thinking about what it was that I enjoyed. I was still helping Casey Hayward. He was playing with the Chargers at this time. I was still helping him with his nonprofit organization. And I was coming home spending just as much time like helping him revamp and rebuild his organization as I was teaching. I was like, hey, I can turn this into a profession. Looking back, I don't know how I did it, God. I don't know how I did it, but I'm thankful that I've always been guided by faith. I'm thankful
Mhm.
that I had the ability to lean not into my own understandings. Because sometimes I'd be leaning and God be like, all right, let me
Right.
get you back on the straight and narrow. I'm confident. Everything that I've done, I feel like I move when I know that it's God's perfect timing and I listen. I think because I journal, it's like that way to like inwardly reflect because even in my journal when I was in England, I wrote, I'm going to have a global impact on education. I'm saying that, and I haven't even walked across the stage and gotten my diploma. The beauty in all of this is that I've been able to do everything that I've wanted to do. When I was getting ready to leave education, I went back on that. I said, Ashley, your goal was to have a global impact. Did you do it? And I was like, yes. So I know that I can pivot. I can lean into this next chapter of my life, knowing that I fulfilled an element of my life. Right now, I have a student who's in Germany and he's like, Miss Green, I'm adding you on LinkedIn. So he's a senior now. He's like, so you can follow along all the work that I'm doing. I'm like, you're going to be a global leader. I'm excited. I have a student in Barcelona who's like, when are you visiting me? I have another student in Madrid and he just wrote me and was like, when are you coming to Madrid? I have students who are like, when are you coming back to Dubai? The beauty here is that these are like my kids, my babies. They're
Tina's Pivot Story, Episode 9. Trina has another big idea for the rap group. She wants them to perform at the Lyricist Lounge in New York City. The Lyricist Lounge was founded in 1991 by hip hop enthusiasts Danny Castro and Anthony Marshall. It was a series of open mic events hosted in a small apartment in the Lower East Side section of New York City. New York City's Lyricist Lounge is compared to the impact Apollo Theater had on soul music. Talented artists poured their hearts out to get discovered. Trina, Tina, and Ebony are practicing outside Trina's home again. Guess what, y'all? Trina says. Ebony and Tina responds in unison. What? We're headed to New York City to perform for the new Lyricist Lounge where all the new artists are being discovered, Trina says. For real? That's so dope. I can't wait to visit New York City, Tina responds. That's crazy. How we gonna get there though? New York City is 5 hours away, Ebony says. I'm driving my new Jeep. My dad said it was cool, Trina responds. Oh boy, the same manual shift Jeep that we got stuck on the hill of Goodman Avenue taking Ebony home, Tina asks sarcastically. Yes, so get your skills up, Trina says. The girls laugh. Fast forward, the girls make it to New York City for their performance at the Epic Lyricist Lounge. Unfortunately, they get lost around New York City and are extremely late. When they finally find the venue, they are too late and see KRS-One walking out. Oh my God, that's KRS-One, Tina whispers to Trina and Ebony. Appearing on the rap scene in 1986 as Boogie Down Productions artist, releasing his first single, South Bronx. South Bronx, the South Bronx, South Bronx, the South Bronx, with his DJ Scott LaRock. KRS-One made it clear that hip hop was going to have to take itself a lot more serious than simply being a music genre. KRS-One, an acronym for Knowledge Reigning Supreme, has been called the conscience of hip hop by Rolling Stone and the greatest live MC ever by The Source magazine. Ebony walks towards KRS-One to get his attention and speak. Hi, we are huge fans of your work, Ebony says to KRS-One. KRS-One joins the girls at the bottom of the steps. We are a rap group from upstate New York, and we would love to know, what do you recommend for us to get discovered? Trina says to KRS-One. You need to be in there, pointing behind him. This is where new artists are being discovered. Why didn't you perform today? He responds. We got lost, Tina says to KRS-One. Well, don't give up. If you're hungry and you got talent, show up early and showcase your talent right here, KRS-One responds. The girls thank him, and Tina pulls out her Kodak disposable camera to capture the moment. KRS-One leaves, but makes sure the girls know that this setback is not the end of their story and encourages them to keep going. The girls return to Trina's Jeep without ever entering the building. They were sad, but they made the most of their time in the big city, shopping for unique outfits that they can use on stage. They return to Rochester in the wee hours of the morning, motivated to keep following their passion. Tina's pivot story continues in episode 10 of the Pivot Muse podcast and is brought to you by Penthouse Media.
Family is my family. I love them. My mom will ask about these kids. They'll ask about my mom. Like, I truly love them. And now they're all scattered around the world. And so the impact is there. I had a group of high school seniors in Dubai, and they're like, when we get through IB, we need to have a Zoom with you. Literally, no one understands us like you. It's moments where everything has come together. I didn't have a real like mentor or real person guiding me into this. Like a lot of what I've done, this has been a journey in a lane of my own. But I know that God's presence in my life has always been like a guiding factor with me going to Dubai, with me returning from Dubai. So God's presence coupled with the deep loss of losing Tish, just knowing that I went through like a season of like depression from losing her. Ashley, you got to get up and you got to continue the work that you guys started. And so I feel like
Right.
that coupled with God has been like the guiding light for me.
Absolutely. And self-awareness. You have to be self-aware to really stand in those decisions. You talked about two major pivots. What did your finances look like? And have you always been financial literate and able to manage your money well? Let's talk about money a little bit in this journey.
Yeah, no, this is great. I feel like I'm still learning about money. It's funny because there's so many elements here. One, educators are highly underpaid, and then we're programmed to give. And when you don't
Absolutely.
give, then you're selfish, you're self-centered, you're all of these things. I had to learn that I had to stop giving so much
Mm,
away. I had to learn that if this is the number, this is the number, because I know the value of outcome or the work or anything that's going to be done. So that was key. I experienced two close tragic losses. One was
mm,
losing Tish in 2016. And then in 2017, Tish's son was killed in a car accident. It was like November of 2017. At this point, I was like, I'm going home to show up for the funeral for the family. I remember having my educator contract, and I was like, I don't want to sign this contract. I remember talking to the director of the school when I got back from the trip, and I said, hey, I'm going to be really honest with you. I don't want to sign this contract. He said, okay, what are your finances like? Have you saved up? Have you taken care of everything? I was like, no. And he said, you're getting a raise this year. Save your money and then quit this job. That was December of
mm.
2017. December of 2018, my principal comes to me, tell me something good. And I was like, yeah, I got to get out of here. I'm like, get out. I took his advice with that. I paid off any debts that I had outside of student loans, and I will have them until they forgive them.
I know that's right.
Listen, I paid off any debts that I had, my car, credit card, all of that. What you learn is the moment you pay off your credit card, you run it back up. But it's okay. I paid all of them. I was going to stay in Dubai an additional year. That was going to be my year off, the year for me to party, to live, to relax, to really enjoy the city. At this point, it's like 2019, and I have been in Dubai since 2015. And it's such a developing city, and the country as a whole, like the UAE as a whole. I took $20,000. Our school gave us like an end of the year severance package based on how many years we had been there. I took that amount and I saved that for my rent in Dubai. Because in Dubai, you pay rent either four checks. The total 20,000 is divided by four, by three, by two, or by one. And so you're not paying rent at the start of every month. When I made the decision to pivot, there was two things. One, it was save money, clear debt, and cut back on lifestyle. Honestly, what I did there was I went to the bank in Dubai and I took out a loan and paid everything off. Then
Smart.
I paid the loan in half the amount of time. We didn't have interest or anything, which they were like, wow. I was like, listen, I'm not playing right now. I was focused. I set myself up for when I quit my job. I made sure my rent was covered. If rent is covered, I am going to continue tutoring kids. Then I was going into schools, coaching and doing consulting. The drive, the hustle has always been in me. I also had parents whose students that I had taught who were successful business owners in Dubai, and they all offered me jobs. While I was thankful for that, I knew that it didn't align with the vision. I knew that the ultimate goal for me was autonomy. It was to be free. In Dubai, I had a housekeeper who was really affordable, but I cut back on that expense. I cut back on getting my hair done as frequently instead of going once a week. I went twice a month. I cut back there. I found ways throughout to cut back, but the beauty was because I prepared by taking all of those steps,
Mhm.
I was still able to live. In
Mm.
Dubai, ladies can go out every single night, ladies' night, drink free and eat free. This depends on where you go. I was still able to explore and enjoy Dubai. I was still able to travel in December of 2019. I traveled to Cambodia, to Vietnam, to Shanghai. I was still able to honor elements of my lifestyle, but I cut back in other areas.
I love that. We do have to make sacrifices to get where we want to go. That was very smart. I love that fact that you took that year and that you were confident in what your path was, that you didn't jump into another job.
Yes,
And you said, my rent is paid and I'm able to hustle and make money. You have all these skills. That's part of the journey. That's part of the transition into full-time entrepreneurship. How do I use my skills? And maybe I work part-time, or I take a really small contract tutoring, or going in and doing some consulting.
I learned the value is understanding and honoring the process. This was me leaning into the unknown, like you just lean in.
Mhm.
And so one of the first gigs I had was with a school in Kuwait. And I don't even remember how much I got paid for that. My next opportunity was to go in and do a school evaluation at a school in Sharjah, which is outside of Dubai. It was a 2-day evaluation, 8 hours each day, and I made $3,000 doing that. There are teachers right now working the entire month to get paid
Mhm.
$3,000, honestly, and
Which is sad.
was very sad.
We have to do better. We just have to do better for our educators.
Yes, I made $3,000. And so I started to realize, because I have the time to show up in education and the educational capacity, the value is a little bit higher. When you're a teacher, you
Mhm.
don't have time to take on those extra opportunities. But I had the time. One of the former owners of a school system that I worked with in Dubai called me in one day, and they first called me and said, "Hey, would you like to be a substitute teacher?" Absolutely not. I did not walk away from this for that. In my
Right.
opinion, it was a devalue. Then they came back, and this time when they came back, the guy who owned the school wanted to have a meeting with me. I went up to the school, I took the meeting, and he was like, "Listen, we have this teacher who's teaching middle school math. Kids aren't performing, the parents are upset. Would you mind coming twice a week just to help the kids?" He's like, "I've already calculated it based on years of experience. If you were teaching, this is what you'd be paid, but this is reduced for these 2 days." And I sat across from him and I said, "That's what I would receive if I was teaching with benefits. I'm an independent consultant. This is my number." He said, "That number is what I pay top consultants." And I was like, "This is my number." We did meet in the middle, but that was even a moment where, talk about value. I realize every minute that I give, I have to honor me in my process. If I don't do this, I don't eat. It was very simple.
Absolutely. If you are taking the leap, making the pivot, and you want to go from corporate or education, a salary job, to entrepreneurship or freelance, you better understand and know your own value, or you will find yourself pivoting back, because if you don't value your work, your time in that way, then you're not able to thrive. Kudos to you knowing that up front, walking in there and being prepared. Let's change it up a little bit. Our producer want to know, who inspired your love for sport? Where did that come from?
Nice. My love of sports started at such a young age. And I remember from the time I was probably 3, growing up in Mississippi, we would go to high school football games. My uncle played. He has a national championship with Mississippi College. He had a record there. I don't know if it's been broken, but my uncle played sports. We would go watch baseball in Mississippi. It was such a huge thing. It was so much fun. Then I played t-ball when I was a member of the Boys and Girls Club in Mississippi. I ran track. It's always been a part of who I am, and I've always been competitive. When I moved to Georgia, it was more organized competition, because in Mississippi there was one high school in the city, and everybody went to that one high school. But in Georgia, it was Northside versus Warner Robins. And as a kid, I would see the town shut down. You'd see the businesses put up who they were rooting for. Everyone would go out and tailgate. And then, it was the city came outside for those games. I remember being in 5th grade, and you pick a side. Are you Team Northside or Team Warner Robins? So I grew up hating some of the schools in Atlanta, like McEachern. And I think once I got to middle school, I started cheering, I started taking gymnastics. And again, like that competitive drive was there. In eighth grade, we were the county champions for basketball. My freshman year of high school, I made varsity cheerleading. And so, front row to like really great athletes. My senior year of high school, I decided to stop cheering. I was like, I do not want to join the band. So I created this group of friends. We were a group of friends, but we were the Jersey girls. Literally, me and one of my friends, we went around to different t-shirt shops in Warner Robins. We selected the jerseys, and then the first game, we showed up in our jerseys, and it was crazy. Everyone, like walking through the
What?
everyone stopped. Everyone turned around. Where'd you get the jersey? Where'd you get the jersey? And so we sat up in the stands. We did crazy, corny cheers. When we did it, everyone stopped. We were louder than the cheerleaders because I have a voice. Everyone would just stop, turn around, and watch us. We went to every single game all the way up to state. We won state my senior years. I'm saying the love has been there. We were in the Georgia Dome. We didn't wear our jerseys to the Georgia Dome. We made shirts that said Jersey Girls, and it was like glittery. My love for sports has been a part of my DNA. It's who I am.
You're talking about building people's brands. And here you are in Warner Robins, literally part of something that's just like new and fresh. And you're like, we need to really liven these games up. Here you go, just create a brand for you and your girlfriends, right? To go out here and show up for the team and really make an impact. I think that's just a great story.
We had a legacy of winning. What was the most beautiful thing to me was going back to a game a few years ago and seeing girls in jerseys. They don't know why, but they carry the tradition. When you think legacy, there's a quote that I often share. It says, "What is legacy? Is planting seeds in a garden that you may never see grow." Why are we really put here on earth? And it's to leave a legacy behind. It's to be remembered for your gifts and your talents to inspire the next generation. I do that through writing. I just so happen to have two of my journals here. This one is I totally got this, and this one's okay, fine, I'm grateful. I believe that I totally got this journal August 2019. So this was a part of my pivot. And it's like a journal to remind me that I'm truly awesome and capable and that I'm seriously going to nail it no matter what it is and no matter how much I secretly doubt myself, because doubt is just a four-letter word and I should doubt the doubt and the nonsense it is. I'm waking up every day and I'm journaling. I'm like, I got this, even when I don't know that I got it or I don't believe I got it.
That's is really beautiful. And I love that you journal. One of the things I wanted to talk about, which is really important in these journeys that we have, is healing and taking time for self-care. I know you took a solo trip to Bali for healing. Tell us about the decision to say, I need to go somewhere even by myself to heal. What does that look like? What did you learn about yourself during that time?
Yes. From my experience, I believe that we all are going to experience something traumatic. It's the way that life works. And you don't get to choose what loss or what trauma impacts you deeply. In hindsight, I thank God that mine happened when it did, because when I first moved to Dubai, I was 26 years old. I spent my mid 20s up to my early 30s in Dubai, but that was like a defining moment for like my womanhood, of me learning who I am, exploring the world, experiencing deep grief, a traumatic loss that for me, I had a moment where I'm crying every day. It was in those collective moments that I was like, it's time. I was like, Tish would not want you to be this upset. Tish would want you to pull yourself together. So I made the decision to travel to Bali. I want to see a healer. But as I was in the car on my way to see the healer, I had this like revelation of, Ashley, you're already healed. I said it to myself. I internalized that. But then once I got to the healer, I watched as a grown man went before me, like squirmed. I was on a solo trip, but I was with Nadia, which I'll tell you about. But I watched as Nadia, she went and they talked. He said, you may have issues with infertility. And she's crying and she's squirming in pain. She's like, That was my biggest fear. And then he gets to me and he does his ritual, his process, and he stands up and stands over me. He's like, "Why are you here?" I was like, "I'm here for healing." He was like, "You're already healed." It was a
Wow.
defining moment. I had just had that moment in the car, and then he affirmed it. I'll be honest with you, if I did not witness the other people in front of me be in pain from his process, I would have thought that he was BSing or this process is fake or phony. But I saw grown men. I don't know what he was doing, but they were in pain. What no one tells you is that healing is a continuum. When you start to heal certain elements, you realize that there's so much more that you have to work through. The start of the journey for me. God is such a defining moment in my life because the person that I sat next to on the plane, we ended up talking and we had like a mutual friend. We exchanged contact information. So, what I thought was a solo trip ended up being we were both there for healing. And so it was a support trip. We did everything together. I wouldn't change that process or that trip. We both needed each other. And it's just a testament to God putting people in your life for a reason.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. I want to talk about before we start to wind it up is your service work. You've participated in a lot of nonprofit initiatives. Would love to know what drives that passion of service. You now have it incorporated in your business.
Thank you. There's several factors that drives the work. One, with me being a former educator, it's an element of service. Everything that we do is for the work and help of others. Growing up, I saw my mom helping out young girls from our church or our neighborhood. And I remember thinking, how are you helping someone else when we need the help? I witnessed and saw very early on. And it's been a part of who I am, my core values. I'll step up, I'll speak out, I'll help strangers. My birthday is July 16th. Tish passed away July 17th. She kept asking me, "What are you doing for your birthday?" And I was like, "The only thing I want for my birthday is to have dinner with you." She nodded her head and said, "Okay, we can do that." One of the last things she said to me, it was actually the 16th, my birthday. She was like, "Take care of the girls." I was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa. We're not doing this movie cliffhanger ending." Or I was like, "We're not doing this." "What girls?" I was like, "What girls, Tish?" She was like, "You'll know." And I was like, "No, Tish, tell me what girls you want me to take care of, and I'm going to do everything that you've asked me to do." And she said,
Right.
"You'll know." I have moments where I get called to speak to girls or to do work with groups of girls, and I show up because I'm like, is it these girls or is it those girls? I don't know. For all I know, it's all of these girls. One of the players that I worked with last year, we selected Play Like a Girl, which is a nonprofit organization to level the playing field between women and girls in STEM and sports. After meeting Dr. Kimberly, the founder of the organization, I was like, this is not going to be a one off. How do we truly support the organization? How do we get involved? Collectively, Dr. Kimberly and I, we found a lane for Jonathan the athlete. So he's presently and currently the only male ambassador for Play Like a Girl. There's several women athletes, but let's also get a guy to use his platform to amplify the work. With that, we recently hosted girls flag football teams at the Gillette Stadium with Bridgestone, Play Like a Girl, and the Patriots Foundation. I am a regional Play Like a Girl mentor, and so I work with the chapter that covers the New England states. I will actually be back in Boston on the 25th to do a power hour, which is like a mentor and power hour for the girls. But I was also asked to speak at the base, which is another nonprofit organization. That was through my relationship with iRobot. We've provided a lot of STEM resources to schools. When I went to talk to those girls, they felt so inspired by my story and my journey. And I was like, again, I'm here because Tish asked me to take care of the girls. So when I get the phone call, when I'm asked, I'm going to show up.
I love that. And it is important to have the male presence in these organizations, even for the young girls that are participating in the organization. Thank you for the work that you are doing. It's very important for women of color to see themselves in all spaces. And we know that we're underrepresented in sports, but we have folks like you, we have Made for the W and the work they're doing to amplify women in sports. So this is just a beautiful way to show women and young women that they can create their own path in an industry that may be male dominated. I love that. Where do you see yourself in your business ventures in the next 5 years? And are there other spaces that you want to pivot into?
Honestly, this is one of those questions where I wake up some days and I feel like I could just take over the world. And then I wake up some days and I'm like, I just want to live in Jamaica. The beauty of it is I'm competitive. So I'm always looking for ways to amplify the work that I'm doing. I'm always looking for ways to grow and to be better. I definitely see myself being a champion for girls. I don't know what that's going to look like in a full capacity.
You don't need an explanation for something like that, because it's really understanding that what the path is 5 years from now is bigger than what you probably even can see at the moment. But you know that you will be champion for the girls in sports. As you were speaking, I really saw a vision of you like doing a TED Talk, being on a really big stage and amplifying your voice. I felt that and I wanted to share it.
Listen, that just made me tear. I appreciate that. I had a conversation in August with Detavio. He's the CEO of Revolt. And it's like, you've helped 3 girls, you could help 300. What's stopping you? And I was like, honestly, I was like, I don't want to be a threat because I'm in sports, I'm a woman. And he's like, you got to let that go. That's something that I've really reflected on as well, not being worried about the thoughts that other people have. I'm 5 feet, I'm short, but I have a presence. And I know that. I know when I walk into a room, you see me, you hear me, you feel me. Sometimes because that is known, I tried to fall in the background a little bit, but he's like, no, what's stopping you?
This is just the beginning of your story in this chapter. I look forward to what comes next. I appreciate that you made time to come on the Pivot Muse for sure. Before you go, we do have to play Pivot or Push. I have 3 scenarios for you that I want to give you and see what your answer is. You're 28 years old. You're facing a crossroads in your current relationship. You're unhappy. You share financial commitments. That makes things complex. So you weigh your emotional toll against a fresh start from cashing out and receiving $15,000 from some joint assets, or sticking it out. Do you pivot or push?
We're pivoting all day. It's a pivot.
Okay. All right. So the next scenario, as a parent, you're confronted with challenges in your child's education. Balancing the decision to pivot to a different schooling approach or persevere with the current system. You consider the impact on your child's development and long-term well-being. Pivot or push?
Pivot.
Okay.
Pivot. And I'll elaborate on that, but pivot.
Okay. Last one. You're 25 years old, you're living on your own, and you're experiencing workplace challenges that leave you very dissatisfied. You're trying to resist the urge to cash out on your 401k and use the $20,000 that you take home to start over, but you realize now is the time to make a decision. Pivot or push?
Pivot. I feel like that's what I did at 25, for real. So pivot.
So that question about having challenges with the current education system that you have your child in, but taking them out, you would pivot. Explain that a little bit.
I feel like you have to be willing to take risk when you know things aren't working. When I was teaching, I was moved to 5th grade to teach a group of students to help our school scores increase in writing. When I was brought onto the system, I'm the youngest teacher. I have the instructional coach's son in my classroom. I have another 5th grade teacher's daughter in my classroom. And they have been teaching fifth grade for years. They've been administrating this writing assessment. But my principal brought me on because she saw the work I was doing with third graders in writing to increase the scores. I came on board and I started off doing things the way that they did them. We did a mock writing test. As we're doing the mock test, I'm making adjustments and changes. I'm staying at the school late. I'm going against the norm. And I quickly became the most hated educator quickly. A fact is a fact, a spade is a spade. My principal appreciated the work that I was doing because she saw that a lot of it was data driven. My students started to trust me because they saw their scores increasing from one mock exam to the next mock exam. I ended up like on our final mock exam, the instructional coach son made a 49 out of. I was definitely mistreated. And it was well known when it came to it, the writing test. All the students took the test in the cafeteria. Driven by data, I had already told certain students who needed to write smaller so that front and back paper. I made the executive decision, which was a huge risk, to tell my students not to write a rough draft paper. And what I told them to do was to create their outline and then to edit on the go. Again, these were all things that I had taught them. Imagine me being in a cafeteria. This is a state test. What happened with the other classes? They wrote out the full rough drafts and did not get their final copy finished. This was all based on data. The things I incorporated, I tried to share with my colleagues. They didn't want to hear it because it was different. It was innovative. It went against the grain. So they didn't listen. I had 21 students that year. 18 students exceeded the writing test. 5 students had perfect scores on the writing test, which unheard of. Our school was recognized at the district level for our scores, which I'm not saying it's all me, but it was definitely like my data really pushed us. The work that we did was unheard of. That's why I'm going to pivot because if it's not working, that's all you need to know. If it's not working and you've tried different methods or strategies, sometimes you have to try something that hasn't been done. It is in those risks that we sometimes find the greatest reward. I wouldn't take that journey back. I stood by my kids, they stood by me, and the parents were happy.
It's plenty of people that deal with kids in particular that deal with anxiety going into tests. I had test anxiety I dealt with. They're processing slower, but they're brilliant kids. It's not that they are not capable. It's just that the environment may not be the right environment for them to excel at it. You start to dig in and figure out those creative solutions. And those creative solutions, like you said, they'll probably be met with resistance. I do appreciate you playing Pivot or Push with us. And this has been beautiful, a wonderful conversation.